The Fantastic Four and their accountant, Mr. Onifon, were discussing their finances. While the Thing and Human Torch were eating hot dogs, Ben said to Johnny Storm, "How many hot dogs are too many?" Johnny replied, "How many is this?" Ben answered, 17. Johnny said, "Oh, you've got miles to go." In the background, Mr. Onofon said to Sue and Reed, "And as you can see, if we turn to page 37, the income from the new patents you filed since the government confiscated your accounts will begin to offset your liabilities enough to have some actual spending money in about 2-3 months." Meanwhile, Ben and Johnny continued talking about hot dogs. Ben said, "I'd kill for a steak." Johnny replied, "You may have to, big guy, and stop looking at me like that." Ben said, "I said steak, not ham." Mr. Onifon continued, "The problem, of course, is that you will still owe income tax on the monies earned to offset those liabilities. Now, obviously, we can deduct a lot of these, but since you're being audited..." Reed Richards, confused, asked, "I'm being audited?" The accountant replied, "Yes, which will tie up any liquid capital for several months." Ben turned his attention to the accountant and said, "Yeah, well, all I want to know is when I can finally get paid. Main thing is, you gotta have mustard on a hot dog, not ketchup." The accountant replied, "Don't worry, your finances are quite secure, Mr. Grimm." Ben said, "Maybe some chili, but then it's technically a chili dog, not a..." Ben then stopped talking, gave a surprised look to the accountant and said, "Say what?" Johnny said, "Gross, shut the door before something jumps out," and Ben continued, "Say what?" Mr. Onifon explained, "Well, ever since the formation of Fantastic Four Enterprises, a 25% share of the company was allocated to you as to the other 3. "I'm sorry, I thought you knew," Reed said. "Ben, I'd mentioned it a while back." Ben replied, "Yeah, but I thought those were just monkey points. 10% of net profit minus costs of building Reed's new Framajammet, which costs more than you'll ever see in a lifetime, like they do in Hollywood." The accountant said, "Oh no, not at all. The trust monies were subtracted from gross receipts, not net." Reed asked, "But that's all gone now, right? I mean, Reed signed it all over to the government to make up for what we did in Latveria." The accountant said, "Yes and no." Reed turned over all the corporate accounts and the accounts of himself, you and Mrs. Richards, because he has power of attorney over those accounts. Legally, he cannot turn over what he doesn't own or control. Mr. Grimm's funds are his and his alone. The Thing asked, "All this time, how come you never mentioned this to me, Reed?" Reed replied, "I assumed you knew, and besides, The Thing then asked, "Okay, whatever. Question is, how much money do I have?" The accountant replied, "I'm getting that for you now." Ben continued, "Because I don't want to get my hopes up, but even a couple grand would be terrific." The accountant, after calculating it on the calculator, said, "There you go, that's the sum total in your accounts as of this past Friday." Ben replied, "Uh-huh." He picked up the calculator and started seeing the amount while saying, "That's an awful lot of zeros." The accountant said, "Actually, you have to scroll over to the side to see the rest of them. I ran out of room on the screen. Here." Ben stopped, gave a surprised look, and started screaming, "I've got money, I've got money." Johnny said, "Oh, this is so going to be bad.